Hey all, welcome to my paint along. Today we're going to be painting this amazing Volkswagen Beetle. I love this old classic car. They come in such cool colors and it's just a really fun shape to work with. A little tricky to paint, but looky here, I've supplied a nice little sketch that you can transfer onto your canvas or paper, whatever you're working on. I'll show you how to do that. So we've got a really moody sky and some fun splatter effects going on here. Okay, let's get to it. Hey there, welcome to my studio. Today I'm going to show you how to paint a Volkswagen Beetle in my acrylic paint along. So it's a little bit of a tricky subject to draw. So I've used a photo that I found here, and I've just traced this guy, and I'll include reference images here for you as well. And so basically this is going to fit really nicely on, I have a 12 by 12 canvas. You can paint on paper that's a bit heavier, meant for mixed media and paints if you don't have canvas, but I'm working with a 12 by 12 canvas today. And so this is just printed off on regular 8.5 by 11 paper. I'm going to position it somewhere around I want my car to be on the bottom half of my canvas. And in order to transfer my image onto my canvas, I'm going to use chalk. So what I need to do is just rub chalk anywhere that my image is here on the back side. Just a chalk pastel. I'll shake the dust off. Okay, and then I just got a little tape to sort of secure this to my canvas. I'm just centering it and then basically aligning it at the bottom here. Maybe I'll put a couple more pieces so it doesn't move around on me. And this is just painter's tape. Really handy stuff to have in the studio. And you can buy it at the dollar store. So to trace this and leave an imprint on my canvas, I'm just going to use a mechanical pencil. You can use a pen. It just has to have a hard point on it so that you can actually press and make an indent on it. I always like to pull it back to make sure that I am in fact making a mark. Yeah, I can see it. Just before I go too far and realize if it's not working right. So I'm just going to trace around this guy. I'm not worried about being really precise here because I'm going to be painting over top. So I just want to get the overall shape of it in. Okay, I think I got all the lines. I'm just going to take it, check it out. Oh, I missed a tire. That should do it. Pretty good. It's light, but that's okay. Got my image. I can see it in there. Okay, so now I'm going to start getting my underpainting in here. And I'll just show you what supplies I'm working with. So I've got 2 brushes. I've got a small round brush here and a medium-sized filbert brush, which is just flat but rounded on the top. And honestly, guys, anything in these similar shapes and sizes will be fine. I like to paint in a loose style. Doesn't really require super fine detail and fine brushes. I've got some water in a cup to clean my brushes, some paper towel to pat them out, and my acrylic paints, which is just the primaries: white, yellow, red, blue. And I have a little towel down here just in case I need to wipe off my brush as well. And don't forget your coffee if you like coffee. Okay. So what I want to do is just go over my lines here with my paint. I'm going to mix a purple. I like to start my sketch in a dark shade. So I typically use this purple color here. So I just mixed blue and red, equal parts. Now my sketch is very fine. I might add a little bit of water. So I'm just going to dip my brush in the water, dip it in the paint a little bit, and then give that a bit of a stir. At the beginning, you'll notice, because our canvas is primed, it's a great surface, but it's very dry at the moment. And the paint can be a little bit, it can stick. So the water just helps smooth it out. So that's a shadow under the car. And I'm just going to go in and trace these lines. Now, I'm not looking for perfection. I just want to get as close as I can. Now I've got my sketch in. I'm just going to fill in any of the dark spots. I like to do that at this stage because it does make it easier once we get into the color. You'll find acrylics can be fairly transparent depending on the quality. We're using kind of like a student grade quality. It's a nice paint, but they are fairly transparent. So the white is the only one that's really opaque. So that means that every layer, so the yellow, red, blue, are all very transparent. You can see through them. So when I paint them on, it kind of disappears into the next one, unless I add a little bit of white. So that's why I do my darks at the beginning. And I'm going to put this shadow in here. Just used a little bit of water in there. And the shadow's darkest at the top and then fades down at the bottom. So if I just keep brushing until my brush runs out, that'll give me a nice gradation. I might darken it a little up here. Okay, so that's our car. Ta-da! Now we don't want him to just be floating in here, so I want to put a horizon line. And sometimes I use my brush to just hold it up and see where things line up, so I can get an idea before I make any marks and commit. So I want him to sit about here. So let's see. Maybe we'll say the top of this hubcap? I don't know. Nope. Rim? I don't know what that's called. Bumper? Tire? Wheel? Well, you know what I'm talking about. So there. So that's our horizon line. I want to show the road as well, because what's going to happen here is I've got a field, a road, and a sky. And so my field is going to go roughly here. If you ever want to check your lines, you can use your brush to measure. So I'm going to put this one up a little bit more. Okay. And then I also want to do a little bit of detail in the sky, not a lot, but just give the impression of some nice billowy clouds in here. So I'm going to draw some nice billowy clouds. The tops of clouds tend to be really billowy and the bottoms can be a little bit flatter. It just kind of gives that impression that they're in the distance there. Sometimes I just do lines to kind of indicate the directions that I want to show. And now's a good time actually to switch over to Mama Bear brush. Oh, I like to give my brushes names. Baby Bear's the small brush, Mama Bear's medium-sized brush. There is a Papa Bear brush, but we are working kind of small today, so we're going to keep it simple and just use the 2 brushes. So like the car, I also want to show my dark spots in the sky right now. And skies are really fun to paint. But like everything, I think people have, we have these ideas like they're just clouds, it's just a sky, it should be easy. And then when we go to do it, it's actually, we overthink it. So we tend to overdo everything. And skies are just, the simpler the better, I find. So I try to work quickly and loosely. Get a little bit more purple paint here, so blue, red. And it's completely fine if your purple shade changes midway through. My painting style is very impressionistic, and so I never have to worry about being extremely precise. It lets me just be loose and have fun. So all I'm doing right now is just making sure I don't have any white canvas showing through in these darker spots, but we will be going over them with lots of layers, so not to worry if there's a few poking through. Skies are a great way to give some gestural lines and kind of a focal point, so you can use these lines to draw attention to your car. Okay, I think that's pretty good. All right, so that's our sketch complete. Ta-da! So when I'm switching between colors, what I like to do is just take my brush, and you'll hear this pouncing every once in a while. That's just me pouncing out the paint of the brush. I don't want to, destroy my brush, but I'm just carefully getting all that paint out. And then I sort of take the excess water off. Then I dry it on my paper towel. Just makes going to the next color a lot better because I'm not going to muddy up my paints with leftover paint in my brush. Okay, so now we get to add some color. I often get asked where to start with a painting, and to be quite honest, there's no rules. It's whatever you want it to be. There are rules. Some people make rules, but I try not to follow them too hard because they can be very, very limiting. So typically people do like to work back to front. So your background, middle ground, foreground. But again, there's different methods, and I'll show you as we go. Sometimes if you've got a great color and it works in the background and the midground, you might want to do it all at once because it's a little bit more efficient. So there's just different things like that. But I think today we will start with the clouds because they're fairly fun and loose, and it'll help us get going with this painting. Now, you kind of want to think about a couple things. What color are you going to paint your car? And then what color are you going to do? The clouds themselves are going to be mostly white, but I want to throw a pop of color in there as well. And I'm thinking I might do an orange car. I was going to do green. Honestly, you can do any color you like. The road's just going to be gray, and then my field is going to be yellow here. So if I did my car orange, you know what? Let's throw down some orange first and see what that looks like. So I just mixed yellow and red. So maybe that's a good thing. Like, for instance, pick the color of your car and then decide from there what your other colors are going to be. So you can see how it's different for every painting. You may not want to paint the sky first. I'm going right over all my lines here because this is a really transparent paint, like I said, and color. If you had some white in that, you may not want to go over too many of the lines, and that's okay. Okay, that's my bumper. Don't need to do that. Okay, that gives me a good idea of what I'm looking at here now. I think I might do a peach sky. With a little bit of purple. I do like the way the orange and purple are playing off of each other. So I can take, the beauty of mixing your own colors is using what you have. So I always like to be efficient with my paints. I'll take some of that purple. I want to lighten it up, so I'm going to add some white. And I also want to warm it up, so I'm going to add some red. See what that gives us. It's a nice purple. Okay, see if I like that. Yeah. Okay, so that's going to be our darkest shade in the sky. So I'm going to go into a few spots in here. It's really nice when the paints are still wet and you get to mix them right on the canvas. I love that. I typically work with oils, so they stay wet a lot longer. Acrylics is really great if you like working fast. And they're great for kids too, because they're a lot easier to clean up. Don't have to worry about ventilation or anything like that, solvents. So acrylics are a great starter paint. Okay, now you'll notice I left a few little spots here and there. I'm going to go in with another shade. I just want to change it slightly. So I've got some left. I'm going to add a little bit more yellow. And I think a little bit, let's see. Yeah, I like that. Sometimes you have to just put it down on the canvas and see what it looks like. I also like to brush with the shape of what I'm painting. So these clouds I'm imagining to be these big puffy clouds in the sky. So they're billowy and they're curved. With the impressionistic style that I paint in, it gives the viewer all these little gaps, and it's quite a treat to look at when we paint very smooth and super realistic, hyper-realism, there's nothing for the viewer to think about. You've given them all the information, which is, I mean, beautiful, and it's a whole different thing, but I personally love Impressionism. I've just added a bit of red to this, and I might lighten that up. So all I've done is created a base color, the dark purple, and then just kind of tinted it in different ways. So I've given myself a few different shades here, just for some interest. So I might put this lighter one down here. And in the distance, you're going to see more of these lines. I'm just throwing it in every once in a while here. Okay. Now I think I'll just rinse my brush off right now. I've got a lot of paint in there. And I want to do the light color that's in the clouds. So I'm going to take a good scoop of white and a little bit of this pink that we've created. Give that a swirl. And that's going to be like our shadow for the clouds. So it's very light, but just tinted slightly in whatever color you choose to do with your sky. I'm going to imagine my sun is coming from above because I've got the shadow below the car, but I sort of want to give it a bit of a direction, choose one side or the other, right? So for my clouds, I can imagine it coming from the left. So my shadows will be on the right, my highlights will be on the left. Shadows on the right here. I'm not filling all the clouds in, just where I want my shadows to go. I know there's a strong tendency to just want to fill the canvas to, you know, feel sort of like you're getting somewhere fast, but it's a lot better to work thinking about your shadows and highlights at the beginning, and then they're set. And it's really nice when you can blur the two, where the two different colors meet. So when they're still wet, you can sort of blend it right there on the canvas. I want a little shadow just defining these two. And I've run out of paint, so that's my cue to jump to the next color. Sometimes things work out really well by accident. So I'm just going to add more white to that same little bit of pink that we had, just to create another lighter version here. And I'm just going to continue to lighten it, leaving a little bit of white to keep brightening it up. You'll notice paint will kind of get stuck in your brush every once in a while, so if that's the case, if you have a spot, just kind of drag it across and press down. So I'm just continually adding white. And I don't want to over blend it. I just want to put enough paint down to cover that white canvas up. Thinking billowy clouds at the top. I do like to do a lot of these sort of dots and lines in my work. Seem that they're kind of like disjointed, but that's that impressionism style I'm talking about, where you have little gaps around it, and the viewer's eye just loves to jump from one to the next and fill in those gaps. Okay, pretty happy with that for now. We can always go back to it if we decide we need to change anything, but I think that's good for now. I'm going to go to my field next. So I'm going to do a yellow color, a golden yellow in here. It's going to be like a wheat field, which is nice with the purples. Anytime you can use complementary colors is really nice. So look at your color wheel and see what's opposite from each other. So blue and orange are opposites, which means they're complementary colors. Purple and yellow are opposite, and green and red. And then all the other shades you have in between. They just punch together. So I'm just going to let that dry. Acrylics take several coats, so don't worry, how it goes on at first. We're going to touch it up, come back to it. Rinse out my brush. You'll notice my paper towel is relatively clean still. When I teach, sometimes I'll notice that, you know, people's paper towels, they're so dirty by the end of the painting session, and that's just because they're just wiping their brush right on the paper towel. But if you are consistent and dunk your brush in water every time, it's a little bit cleaner. So I'm going to do the gray now for my road. Now grays are an interesting color. They have every color in them, and it's tricky to get that balance. I know it's going to take a lot of white, so I start with the color that it usually takes the most of. I also know it's going to take a good amount of blue, but I do want to warm it up. I don't want it to just be a blue shade on my road. I want it to be a warm shade. So I will add some red. And now it's a purple road. So I need to add a tiny bit of yellow. That's typically how I work with mixing. Start with the color that you think is the strongest. That's going to be the largest amount. And then gradually add in the other colors that you need. And then tweak it as you go. So it is looking a little on the yellow side here. So I'm going to add a bit more red. And once you start mixing with primary colors, you can really see how colors interact with each other. You learn a lot better how to mix colors. It's a lot easier to mix, to learn, when there's only 3 colors. You know exactly how they're interacting. So I'm filling in everywhere except this shadow here. I've also started saving my paints at the end of each session, my acrylics. So when my paint palette's when I'm all done and I've got all these different colors mixed together here, but you know, paint's still wet and good, I've been throwing it into a little jar, and I'll do a video on that. And it gives you, you know, like a gray or a brown shade, but that way you're not throwing paint down the sink and, you know, being more efficient with your paint. So it's really neat. So that would have been perfect for this color here. You can just buy little glass containers and throw your leftover paints in there, and then it's kind of a surprise, whatever color it is, but it's usually something that you can use. And as long as it's airtight, it'll stay fresh. Okay, now I also have this color in my car. I might switch to Baby Bear brush. So anytime I have another color somewhere on the painting, I just put it down to be a little bit more efficient, so I don't have to mix this later. I'll use it for the bumper too, the bumpers here. And there's a couple of little lights going on there. And it's kind of a color that works for the window in the back. and the handle. Okay. Maybe there. We might want to give some attention to this shadow down here. I want to darken it up a little bit. So I will go to Mama Bear Brush. Take some, you know what, I'm just going to go straight into this purple that we have. So that's just red and blue. So it goes dark to light. And you know what? While I have this color, I'm going to go into the car with Baby Bear Brush, small brush, just to define some of these lines a little bit better in here. I typically do like to work from dark to light, but like I said, sometimes you got to break the rules, so don't get too worried about things like that. And then I just want to darken any shadows that are in this. And it can be kind of daunting to do some of these little lines. But the other thing is that you can always paint back over them. So if you feel like you've painted a bit too thick, you still have a chance to go through over top of it with another color. And that's a nice little cheat. Oops. So this goes all the way down here. Acrylics are so easy to fix. If there's something you don't like, just paint over top of it. Nothing's set in stone. Okay, it's coming along. Oh, I see something I did here. So I lost my highlight in the car. Got a little distracted. So, a perfect example of how to fix something. You just paint over top of it. There we go. All right. Looking good. Okay. Now, I think we'll start adding some different shades to our field here, this yellow. Now, it is fairly small, so I'll just stick with Baby Bear. What I want to do is create a little bit of a darker shade. So I'm going to take yellow and some red and a touch of blue. Blue is very strong, so just be careful how you use it. Now this is just going to be a shadow. So our background has a little bit of this dark color at the top of the field, and then throughout the field and at the bottom here there's a little shadow where the field meets the road. But just a few lines, and I'm painting horizontally with my field here. Paint with your subject matter in the direction that it lies. Okay. I'm not getting worried about details because it's the background. Some more yellow. You can put that right into that color we just mixed. Some white. This will be my highlight. It's a little dull. I might add a touch of this orange. And I'm just creating these little dashed lines, kind of starting and stopping. Looking good. Now I'm going to rinse my brush out or just scrape it off here. Add some more white for our final highlight in the field. And just pop out a couple spots. There we go. Good. Okay, I'm going to go to the road, add some shadows and highlights to the road. So while I'm painting, I always look at my palette. Is there something there that I can use? And this pink actually works really well on the road. So I'm going to scoop that up. You'll start to see a lot more color in things, like what you think is just a gray road suddenly has lots of different colors in it. Maybe it's the reflection from what's happening in the sky or the car. And again, I'm painting with the road, so horizontal here. And why not throw some of this into the hubcaps? Well, I have it. They're a little darker on the bottom. And I'm going to bring it up into the shadow here as well, just to soften that up. And in this line here. Okay. Now I think I'll add a little bit of a highlight in there. So I've got my gray still here. I'm just going to add some white to this. And it looks kind of like a wet day here in my photo that I'm working from. So I'm just going to add some shine to the road. And then I think I might add somewhat of an orange gray. So I have some orange left on my palette. I'll scoop that into the gray. And I think I want it a bit darker, so I'll add a touch of blue, some more red. You do have to be a little careful when you're working with brown and grays. They can quickly get muddy. So that's why I still like to have some pops of color in there. Alright, and then I might just add some white to that color that I just had there. And then just do a little bit more highlight here. That's the nice thing about working from dark to light. You can simply continue lightening till you've got the desired shade. It looks like there's like little leaves blowing around here, so I can put some little dots on my road. It's also kind of interesting just to break up the space a little bit. And you can get really bold with your brush strokes if you want to here. Create some interesting lines, maybe a little splatter with your brush. That's kind of fun too. On the road, it can be a really neat effect. See if I can get some. You need a little bit of water in your brush. Try it on the paper towel there. There we go. Kind of a fun technique. You could use a darker color if you want. I just want it to be kind of subtle. That's pretty good for me. Now we're just kind of focus on our car and the shadows down here. So I think I'll work on this shadow here, and it is fairly dark, so I'm just going to go in with one more dark layer the purple, so just blue and red. Along the top part here. Okay. And I do need to sort of fade that down. So if I take that purple and add a lighter color, even white, I've got this light gray, so I'm going to use that. And just brush that along the bottom pretty loosely here. Soften that edge up. Works pretty good. Now the tires are a very similar color too. So I can use this light purple. I've just switched to Baby Bear because it's a bit smaller detail here. And I'm not covering the whole wheel, just bringing out some highlight kind of in the center of it, around here. You may want to add a little bit more white just to pop that out a bit more. Again, painting with the shape of the object. And it also works well in this part here too. Could even work in our bumper. Purples are a great shadow. And the windshield. It can even work in our field. Create a bit of a shadow line here. That's the great thing about being loose. Just allowing yourself to go wherever you think it's needed. Okay, I think we'll get into the car. Might stick with the Baby Bear brush. So I'm going to take some yellow and some red. See how that works. Ooh, that's nice. Now this is just building up layers here. I think I'll just cover the whole car, all the orange parts here, over top of our purple lines. Okay. Now it does need a little bit more definition at the bottom, I see. Needs a bit of shadow. So I'll just make a purple. I just want to define the bottom a little bit more so it feels like it is shadowed and sitting on top of that bright gray, lighter gray there. Anywhere else you need to darken up around the wheels here, you can do that. Okay, now we just need to bring some highlights into this Volkswagen. So I will add create an orange again, yellow, a little bit less red this time. I want to start to lighten it up, and a little bit of white. Now the lightest spots are the top, so the roof and the top of the hood here, and then these bumps over the tires. So I'll work top to bottom. I'm going to let that orange dry for a little bit because it's kind of wet. So I'm going to go to the grays and the metals that we have in the hubcaps and everything and just give them a bit more of a highlight. Just the top portion there. There's a little bit of reflection on the glass. And there's some highlights around the windows as well. And some of the lines on the car. So there's this one that comes all the way across here. Pretty strong line. Okay, I'm not sure if I'm liking this muddy sky color, so I might go back to that and brighten it up a little bit. Perhaps a pink. Let's see. some red, some white, maybe a different shade of purple, little blue, okay. I think we can get back to our orange now. So just a process of lightening it up until we get a nice light highlight. So I've added more yellow to my orange and some more white. Now the car has a lot of different directions that I'm painting in. It's got these curves, it's got these lines across, and it kind of has these lines down the panels. So it can be a little bit confusing. But see how that really feels now that that is vertical? Just by painting a few horizontal lines, or sorry, vertical lines. Just kind of have to think about the shape and what's the strongest direction of it. Now we're starting to see something happening there. Now I just want to go back with a bit of a darker shade in there. Just to pop out some of these colors. So yellow, red, a bit more red. Now it's going to go on transparent, so I won't be able to cover that easily unless I add a touch of white. All right, it's looking pretty good. Sometimes I like to step away from my painting and see it from across the room. That helps. Just noticed some light spots in the tire here. Just want to make sure there's no light in the shadow there. I think that's pretty good. Oh, I do see one thing I want to add. In my photo, there's some leaves on the road, and it just seems to tie in that yellow a little bit better. So I'm going to take, actually I'll start with the dark yellow here. The dark golden color that we did. Just put a few of those down there. And then lighten that up, white, and just kind of highlight bits of that. Just ties in the yellow a little bit there. And I might do some purple too, just for fun. Just a few little dots here and there. Those could be leaves in shadow. Okay. I kind of liking the idea of the splatter, so I might go a little crazy and take some of this dark color. Yeah, I like that. Sometimes you just gotta play with it. Add a little bit of that in there. All right. And just a little bit of highlight on this guy, and I think she's done. There we go. That yellow, that orange is so transparent, so it took quite a lot of building up, but I'm seeing it now. Okay, looking good, guys. I hope you had fun, and I'll see you in the next video.